probably heard of or know someone who's had surgery go drastically wrong. We all hope that it won't happen to us, but really, how common are these frightening mistakes these days? According to the LA Times and Washington Post, a study in the Archives of Surgery reports that the problem may be 20 times more common than previously thought, and that prevention efforts may be very inadequate. The Joint Commission on Accreditation of Health and patient advocacy groups have tried to eliminate such mistakes by having doctors and patients review and verify the procedures beforehand. When the Insider Exclusive investigated 4 separate databases, including the Federal National Practitioner Data Bank, a repository of malpractice payments and disciplinary actions, their records clearly showed that surgery mistakes occur between 1,300 and 2,700 times a year in the United States. Wow, that's a lot of unhappy and critically injured patients, and injured by doctors. Today, the Insider Exclusive investigates the horrendous surgery malpractice story of Lazaro Perez, and how the Palm Springs General Hospital and Dr. Juan Julio Hernandez Pombo totally botched a rather common surgery and nearly killed Lazaro. In fact, in order to save his life, he had to be transferred to another hospital. In 2010, nearly 90% of all gallbladder surgeries are performed using a method known as laparoscopic surgery. Surgeons now consider laparoscopic gallbladder surgery to be the gold standard when removal of the gallbladder is necessary. On the screen, as you can see, one of the most common techniques for performing this procedure is begun by making a small incision near the navel and inserting a needle into the abdominal cavity. The cavity is then inflated with carbon dioxide gas. This distension allows for easier viewing and creates a workspace for the surgery to be performed. The needle is then removed and a sharp, hollow metal cylinder called a trocar is inserted in the now inflated abdominal cavity. The laparoscope is equipped with a camera that allows a magnified view of the inside of the abdominal cavity to be projected onto the video monitors located on either side of the operating table. Once the laparoscope is in place, the abdomen is examined to ensure no injuries resulted from the placement of the trocar. 3 additional trocars are then placed into the abdomen through small incisions under direct observation through the laparoscope. It is through these ports that various surgical instruments are inserted for manipulation and dissection. The surgeon then watches the monitor and performs the operation by manipulating the inserted surgical instruments. In the typical procedure, the end of the gallbladder is pulled upward toward the diaphragm. This allows the cystic duct, the cystic artery, and the common bile duct to be seen. Once these structures have been clearly identified and dissected away from the surrounding tissue, the cystic duct is sealed with a clip placed near its junction with the gallbladder. The surgeon then places 2 more clips near the point where the cystic duct joins the common bile duct. The cystic duct is cut and separated between the clips. The cystic artery, which provides the main blood supply to the gallbladder, is then divided in the same way. In performing this procedure, the surgeon must be meticulous, for the cardinal rule of all gallbladder surgeries is that no anatomic structures are clipped or cut until the surgeon is unequivocally certain that they have been properly identified. Now, surgeons can either do this the right way or the wrong way. And in Lazaro Perez's case, Dr. Pombo did it the wrong way. The right way is when the gallbladder is finally removed, the surgeon identifies and cuts the right ducts and avoids cutting or nicking the wrong ducts. These ducts are small and close together, and when a doctor who lacks the proper training or skill improperly identifies the ducts, the results are cases like Lazaro Perez. The duct that should be cut is called the cystic duct. The most common mistake made during laparoscopic gallbladder surgery is cutting of the common bile duct instead of the cystic duct. And that is what Dr. Pombo did exactly. And when that happens, it sends bile into the patient's abdomen and in effect poisons the patient. Incompetent or negligent surgeons like Dr. Pombo, who rushed to perform this money-making surgery, pose a serious risk to patients and to safe medicine. This year, more than 1 million people in the United States will learn they have gallstones, and approximately 75,000 will need surgery. And one of them could be you. Out of the 75,000 gallbladder surgeries this year, approximately 1 out of every 200 patients will likely develop a bile duct injury. Compared to the traditional surgery, the most modern gallbladder surgery procedure can cause up to 10 times as many bile duct injuries. Lazaro Perez is just one of the 200 very unfortunate patients who, through the hand of fate, met up with Dr. Pombo, who had only performed 1 or 2 laparoscopic gallbladder removals prior to the one he attempted on Lazaro. Plus, he had been previously sued in the Midwest by a patient for the same procedure, which also went bad. Today, the Insider Exclusive presents Surgery Mistakes, Lazaro Perez's nightmare story, and how his lawyers Stuart Greenberg and Mark Stone, partners at the law firm of Greenberg and Stone, got justice for Lazaro Perez, earning them the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best plaintiff trial lawyers in Florida and in the nation. They have seen many innocent, hardworking people suffer needless injury at the hands of incompetent and negligent doctors, and because of that, they are driven to help people who have been harmed by the negligent actions of others. Their goal, not only to get justice for Lazaro Perez, but to make sure healthcare is safer and also to hold hospitals and their insurance companies much more accountable. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from Miami, Florida, at the law firm of Greenberg and Stone. It is my great pleasure to introduce Stuart Greenberg and Mark Stone to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
One of the clients that you're representing in the case we're going to talk about today is Lazaro Perez. Tell us a little bit about what happened in this case.
This was a tragic situation. Back in 2003, Lazaro had a pain in his stomach, and he went to a local emergency room called Palm Springs Hospital in Hialeah, Florida. They did some studies on him, and they said that he had to have his gallbladder removed.
Which I understand a lot of people have not gallstone surgery every year, but a lot of people have gallstones.
Correct.
Every year, which cause pain in their abdomen.
Correct. And in his case, actually, he really didn't need to have it removed, according to the experts that we had hired in the case, but the surgeon that the hospital provided for him said you need to have it removed, and he was going to do it laparoscopically.
And this was the on-call surgeon at the time, whose name was?
Dr. Juan Pombo Hernandez.
Okay.
And they scheduled our client for surgery, and he performed the laparoscopic procedure. The day after surgery, they sent him home.
Which is typical in cases like
Correct.
this, right? Okay.
But what happened in the few days after that was he all of a sudden developed pain in his abdomen and jaundice. So when he went back to the emergency room, to the hospital, they realized something was wrong. And normally what happens in a case like this is the doctor makes a mistake and cuts the wrong duct when he removes the gallbladder. And this doctor cut the duct, the wrong duct, and there was bile spewing into his stomach. And bile is very acidic. So it was causing an irritation in his stomach. Instead of then sending him to a specialist who could resolve this issue by probably putting a drain in, draining out the bile, letting the stomach and the organs cool down, this doctor decided to admit him to the hospital, do some tests, and without the qualifications to do so, operated on him a second time.
Now, he had the authorization from the hospital to do this.
Yes, he did. Although he really had no experience ever doing these procedures.
I understand he only had, this was a second operation or something like that?
The second operation of this type he had ever done in his life.
And the other operation, he had been sued by the client, right?
That's correct. It occurred in the Midwest. And the second operation he did on our client did not go well. And he did a third operation on him for 8 hours, which didn't go well.
Now, normally in a hospital, I mean, you've got a patient. I mean, the hospital administration has got to be saying to themselves, if they have a review board, wait a minute, we brought a patient in, it didn't go well, we had another operation, didn't go well again, we had a third operation. They're kind of thinking liability here, aren't they?
You would think.
But in this case, they weren't.
You know, it's hard to think what they were thinking. They allowed this doctor to maintain treating this patient and doing what he wanted to do, when they should have said, get him over to the university teaching hospital as soon as possible.
What happens next?
The family insists he's dying. He's in intensive care. He doesn't know what's going on. The doctors basically throw up his hands up and says, I don't know what else to do. They say, well, let's get him over to the University of Miami Jackson Memorial Hospital. It takes them 7 days to transfer a critical patient.
Why is that?
We don't know.
Don't they have, is it Jackson Memorial? They have an emergency room, don't they?
They sure do. And
anybody can come into an emergency room, right?
Yes, they can. And Jackson is very good at accepting patients who have had problems elsewhere. When they finally get him over to Jackson, and he's looked at by the Jackson physicians, the Jackson doctor on call asked the family, in what third world country was he operated on?
Right.
They couldn't believe what they had seen. And it took them 6 months and a number of procedures to finally make this man better than he was.
What is his condition today?
He is no longer has a colostomy, thank goodness.
He had that temporarily.
He had that temporarily. But his condition is such that he is at risk for a blockage for the rest of his life. So in order to avoid that or to check on it, he has to undergo tests once or twice a year under general anesthesia. And he, as a result, he may need to have a kidney transplant in the future.
How did he come to you to have you represent him?
One of his family members came to us when he was so sick. After they had gotten him into Jackson and after they were working on him, the family realized that they needed someone to fight for him.
And what was your legal strategy in this case?
Well, once again, we assemble all the medical records, retain an expert, who will then review the medical records.
For the audience that's watching this right now, when you say, you say it easily, we assemble all the medical records. Assembling is the act of discovery, subpoenaing the records, asking for the records, right? Oftentimes medical professionals don't give it to you too readily, do they?
Well, you're right. Fortunately, here in the state of Florida, they are under an affirmative obligation to turn over records once we request them pursuant to statute.
Or what will happen?
Well, well, obviously, ultimately, we will bring a lawsuit with the records or without the records, but under the current state of the law, we are under an affirmative obligation to request records. They are under an affirmative obligation to produce them prior to litigation even being filed.
Now, when he went to Jackson Memorial, I understand he was there for a while. They saved his life, basically, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
And the cost, just the cost at Jackson Memorial was $900,000?
$900,000.
Almost $1 million.
Almost $1 million, sure.
Okay. Tell us the outcome of this case.
After extensive discovery in the case, depositions, right before trial, we resolved the case, where the defense, number one, paid all of his outstanding medical bills, and number two, paid our client a total of approximately $2.6 million.
We have, and we're going to show right now, a deposition, one of the depositions you did of Dr. Pombo, where he admits doing it incorrectly. So we'll go to that right now.
We separated the duodenum, and then we go into the ligament of Treitz. About 20 centimeters from the ligament of Treitz, we make a resection. And we bring that loop in conjunction with the duodenum that we transected. So we have a drain, a total drain through the intestinal bowel. At that time, then we put the side of the duodenum into the either hepatic or common duct for drainage of bile.
Which one? What are you answering, doctor?
I mean, it wasn't the duodenum that was attached to the hepatobiliary duct.
So what you told me a few minutes ago, the way you described it, is different from the way
it's incorrect. The way I describe it, there's a short distance between the jejunum and the duodenum.
As a result of this case, Dr. Pombo, was his license taken from him by the Medical Review Board?
No, it's rare that the Medical Review Board ever revokes a doctor's license to practice medicine.
Why is that?
I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah.
Unlike the bar, which we're responsible to, medical doctors rarely lose their license unless they really commit a heinous crime. Most medical malpractice is committed by 2 to 3% of the doctors, yet these doctors still maintain their licenses to practice.
Now this case, and I remember reading, it was a long, hard battle. Finally, the hospital admitted responsibility, correct?
Yes.
Why didn't they do that in the beginning? You know, I mean, why drag it out? And the reason I ask this question, it may seem kind of, you know, foolish, but the bottom line is without lawyers like yourself who are willing to go to bat for these people, most people would lose, wouldn't they?
Sure, but understand this. Hospitals are businesses, they're corporations.
Yeah.
They're in it for profit. And what they try to do is, number one, they want to see if the lawyer has the guts to go forward, has the money to go ahead and invest in the case, and if the client has the guts to go forward. Because oftentimes they'll make offers and they'll try to entice someone to settle a case for less than 100 cents on the dollar because they know his economic condition.
Did they make an offer in this case in the beginning?
Sure, they made many offers, and we did not resolve this case until our client got what we felt was a fair settlement offer.
And you settled the case. It's public knowledge what you
That's
settled?
correct. Yes, it is.
What do you mind saying?
2.6 million.
And what did they offer in the beginning? I think, what, 100,000 or something?
It started about that, yeah.
100,000. So, you know, as the audience watches it, they might think, well, why aren't they doing the right thing? Very rarely do they do the right thing, do they?
Only when the gun
They're
is to their
forced to.
head and it's cocked do they do the right thing usually.
Today we have Lazaro with us. We're going to bring him on right now. It's my great pleasure to introduce Lazaro Perez and his interpreter, Vicente de la Vega. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This has been a horrendous experience for you, hasn't it?
It is so.
Take us back to that day when you had a pain in your stomach, in your abdomen, and you went to the hospital.
Fue un dolor bastante.
Well, this was a very acute pain that I had, and I didn't know what the diagnosis was going to be, but it was diagnosed as problems with a gallbladder, and that was the operation.
Mm-hmm. After you had the first operation and it was a failure, what were your thoughts about the doctor?
En realidad no tenía yo la conciencia de que fuera un fracaso.
I really wasn't aware that the first operation had been a failure. I was really told that I was full of gas and that I should wait.
Mm-hmm. You subsequently had 2 more operations, a total of 3, and you were in worse shape than when you first came in the hospital.
Definitely. Even while I was in the hospital, there are certain things that I don't even remember about, although my family has told me about.
Right. Eventually, you were transferred to Jackson Memorial. They saved your life. When you look back on Dr. Pombo, the doctor that was a surgeon for you, what do you think of him?
Pienso mucho en las dificultades que tuve y creo.
I think a lot about the difficulties I had, and he was a person who operated on me 3 times, and he lied to me.
Mm-hmm. In this particular case, with your lawyers getting justice for you, getting a relatively good settlement, what is your opinion of your law firm?
Para mí la mejor.
To me, it's the best. The understanding that this law firm offers. They treat you not as an attorney to a client, but as a friend to a friend.
Well, I am so glad that you had resolution and some sort of justice here. I certainly hope that you can feel better every single day.
Thank you very much.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Roxana Gonzalez, Lazaro's niece, as well as Stuart Greenberg again. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You lived this experience with Lazaro, didn't you? Your uncle.
Yes, I did.
Tell us a little bit about what you're familiar with going through this terrible ordeal.
Well, my uncle was a very happy person.
Mm-hmm.
He was never really he would never get sick or anything. And after this whole thing happened, he's not the same person. He's very sad most of the times. Just not the same person after he went through all this situation, this pain he went through.
Do you remember seeing him in the hospital after the 3rd operation?
Yes.
What did he look like then?
He was dying.
Yeah.
He wouldn't speak. He was just in the bed dying.
Yeah. Now, when he was transferred over to Jackson Memorial, did anyone ever figure out why it took so long?
Jackson said they don't know, and Palm Springs said Jackson claimed they had no beds.
As a result of getting out of Jackson Memorial, and over the last, how long has it been, 2 years?
No, it's been 6 years.
6 years. Has he gradually improved?
Yes, he has improved.
Yeah.
But it's been very difficult for him.
Still?
Yes.
Okay. Does he have someone help him at home or what?
He has a sister. His sister helps him.
Okay. If you could say one thing to the Palm Springs General Hospital in Hialeah, what would you say to them?
I would say that they have destroyed perfectly normal person.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you very much.
What is medical malpractice?
Medical malpractice is simply negligence committed by a medical care provider. In the state of Florida, as in most states, it's basically has the doctor, the surgeon, the hospital utilize reasonable care based upon the medical standards in the community.
Yes.
It's that simple.
And is it pretty easy to determine what the reasonable care definition is?
Sure. I think most medical providers will agree on what the ultimate standard of care is.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's simply determining whether or not the doctor's or the hospital's actions have fallen below that standard of care.
How do you suspect medical malpractice negligence?
Well, we look at every case on its facts. We have to get the records. We have to have them reviewed by an expert. And we rely on the experts to tell us whether or not somebody fell below the standard of care, meaning they either did something they shouldn't have done or they failed to do something they should have done.
But it has to be pretty blatant, doesn't it?
Well, Mark and I have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
So we take a look at the facts of a case, we research it. If the results are poor, sometimes, unfortunately in medicine, it's not an exact science. You get a bad result. That happens because it's no one's fault.
Yeah.
Other times, there are fault that causes bad results, and that's what we look for.
Well, I want to thank both of you for representing these people that need this kind of representation, that don't have, the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal to go to bat for them. And I want to thank you both for being on the program. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.